Welcome to the Nautic Nomad podcast. I'm your host, Randy Berry. Throw off the bow lines, sit back and relax as we discover adventure, explore the world on water, and share about everything yachting. What's up, nomads? Today I have my friend Alex, who's a chief stewardess on board a 60-meter super yacht, joining me to discuss how to craft your career in yachting. We invite you to be a fly on the wall as we discuss the state of the industry and hiring from the perspective of crew recruiters and heads of department. It's a really good thing to plot your career in yachting, whether you're already in the industry or considering joining. It's never too late to set yourself up for success and the types of jobs that you want next. I feel that career planning for the long run is one that is underrated when people discuss the job hunt. Sometimes people only consider what kind of boat they want that will serve their immediate needs, but not always what will serve their careers best in the long run. How do you know when gratifying your immediate desires is also going to help your career? If you're wondering how to be sure you have the experience required to stand out above the crowd for the types of jobs you really want, keep on listening as we discuss this topic further. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, of course. So this is my 8th year in super yachting. My fourth year as chief stew. I was 7 years before I came super yachting. I worked on a charter yacht in the UK, and then hit 30 and decided it was time to go travel and save up some pennies and see what super yachting was all about. And I've been here 8 years since. So
Wow,
that's it, really.
That's amazing. I didn't even know that you worked on a charter yacht back home before you came yachting.
Yeah, it was very, very different. It was a day charter boat. So during the summer, I was doing this stew thing, and then in the winter, I was varnishing, anti-fouling. Probably would have gone down the deck route if I wasn't such a pale, pasty British redhead with a penchant for skin cancer. But other than that, so I had to, else I probably would have worked on deck. But no regrets.
I feel your pain. I'm an inside cat. I'm like, I cannot do that sun, especially because you're always chasing the sun, so you're never
exactly like there's no reprieve from it at all. So
that's so awesome.
I'm going to thank myself in my 50s when I don't look so old. So
that's awesome. Me too. That's so great. Oh man, and you actually met your husband.
Yes.
It's really like it's tough though. I know like you guys are kind of going like through the thing where you're working at different jobs because it is really difficult sometimes to get a job in yachting with your significant other. But you guys do a really amazing job. I mean,
yeah, we do okay. I think the main thing is that we're both career yachties. Neither of us want to compromise. And I think if you take a couple's job, a lot of the time one of you is having to take that drop in salary or take that less senior position, and neither of us want to do that. We both really love our jobs and we want to do the best that we can, and we want the most money out of it. When all is said and done, we want to achieve the most out of our yachting careers that we can. So yeah, it was a conscious decision, but it's not easy, and this year's been the hardest. But it will get easier in the future. I think once we kind of get into a routine of seeing each other.
That's really amazing. Like you say, you sometimes do have to make that sacrifice and to be like, look, in the short term, I'm going to take this knock and whatever that sacrifice that means. No job is ever perfect. I remember when I was doing crew placement and you put people forward for jobs and they're kind of like, yeah, it's like almost what I want, but not 100%. And just thinking like, it's really rare that
doesn't happen.
Yeah. Like, if you get 3 out of 5.
In the same way that as an employee, you're not 100%. In the same way that there's no way you can tick everybody's boxes either. You just you have to accept that you're not going to tick every single box. There's no such thing as a perfect boat. Right. There's no such thing as a perfect crew member either.
Everyone comes with their own quirks.
Exactly.
Sharp edges, and it's like going into like a rock tumbler. I feel like when you get into yachting, you've got all of your hard edges, and you're like, this is who I am, and you kind of like meet new people in different cultures, and they're from different parts of the world, and you all just kind of rub off on each other, and hopefully over time get a bit smoother edges. But you're still unique, you're still you, but hopefully after time you aren't being extremely abrasive.
Exactly.
There's always one.
Yeah, there's always one. They do tend to get churned up and spat out, though. In every rock tumbler, there's an exit, isn't there? There's where the bad apples come flying out. There's always the Hopefully.
That's true.
Hopefully.
Yeah,
Because if you can't
that's
adapt,
true.
if you can't be flexible, then it's not the industry for you at all.
Right. Now, coming up to hiring season now, so well, it pretty much is hiring season. So what are your best tips for picking the right job? Someone's, sitting there looking at something, being like, okay, I've got three positions in front of me if they're lucky. What have you found over time has helped you to make the best decisions for the jobs you've taken?
I think your gut instinct on how you feel about the conversations you have with the people on board. There is no way of telling until you're on board, just like there's no way telling about a crew member until they are on board.
Right.
But you have to follow your gut instinct. I think the main thing is to work out what your plan is. If you're a long-term career yachty, you need to work at what your CV is lacking. Maybe you take that drop in salary for a boat that does charter, because long term you want to do charter, so you need to get that on your CV, because you're not entitled to charter. No one's entitled to be given a busy charter yacht and earn 30 grand in tips. No one deserves that. You have to earn it, and you may get that by working on a less busy charter boat. You get that charter experience on your CV. Or maybe you're looking for a quieter boat where you can have an easier pace of life and just travel a bit more and have some more downtime. Work out what you really want, because that's the first thing. There are those boats that people are going to come in, earn shed loads of money and leave at the end of the season because they're completely burnt out and they've earned loads of money, so they can go off traveling for 6 months a year. There is a boat out there for everyone in that respect, and work out what you want, so that you don't take the wrong position and then end up moaning about the fact you've taken the wrong position that whole time, because there's nothing worse than somebody accepting a lower salary because they need, for example, days at sea, and then moaning about that lower salary the whole time they're on board whilst getting their days at sea. Work out what you want, and tailor it, and accept that if you're adding that charter, maybe you're taking a lower salary because charter is traditionally a little bit lower in basic because you're earning tips. Maybe you've taken a boat with less holiday, but it was because it offers you all this experience with Russian service, or whatever it is that you need to add onto your CV. Make sure you have that in your foremind, because a few months into your job, if you haven't picked what you want, what you're aiming to get, then you're just not going to be happy, and no one wants you on board if you're unhappy, and no one wants to be on board if you're not happy. So that would be
like, why is this person here?
Exactly. Like, why did you take the job? Like, if you knew in advance that was going to annoy you, and you're not going to tick every box. And if you're a long-term career yachty, then you've got a basis that you want on board. A prime example is my husband worked on a very new build for 3 years. So when he left that, he knew he had to go and find something a little older that needed a little more maintenance, because he needed those skills. And that's what he had to do. And that's what he did. And, you have to acknowledge that we're not all perfect. We all have gaps in our CV that we need to fill to get to where we want to go eventually.
Right. That's a lot of wisdom. Really good for people who are getting into the industry to hear. I've seen people who are completely green to the industry who, see an itinerary of a boat that's private and, it's going to go into dry dock one time a year. And they're like, I don't want to be in the yard. And it's kind of, it's like every boat goes to the yard. That happens, and if your boat's not going to the yard once a year, you're probably not in a great program.
Yeah, like, you may not make it across the Atlantic.
Yeah. Or being like, I want to be on a charter boat, and they've never worked on a yacht before. Chief Stew wants to, unless you're going to be sitting in laundry, even that, you still need a beast in the laundry. You got to know what's happening. Those people want you on board, and then they're going to want you to perform.
Exactly. Everybody loves the idea, and I love charter. I think charter is really good fun. That said, there's a lot to be said for very nice, quiet owners that are in bed by 9:30. You can't say what you need and what you want until you've done it, until you can acknowledge who you are as a person, whether you can cope with it. Because I've had people that sort of sit there and say to me, well, I just want charter. And I look at them and I think, Christ, you're moaning when you're in bed by 10. What do you think charter is? You're the first one off on your break. You're running down the corridor before I've even said go. What makes you think you'd be good at charter? And that's, don't careful what you wish for, I guess, is the phrase. A quiet private boat to learn those basic skills. There is nothing wrong with that.
Definitely. I was really lucky in that sense. Like, that was my first job for a year. I worked on a private boat and just got, a nice ease into the industry, I guess, like learned maintenance, a lot of maintenance, the stuff, really important stuff, which people don't think about sometimes. The things you end up doing as a stew, cleaning out vents and cotton budding things and detailing.
Absolutely, like everything.
Yeah, absolutely everything. Those basic skills though, like how to properly clean on a boat, it's
Yeah.
really very different from I'd done housekeeping on land, and that was just miles different from how you
Yeah,
clean a boat. So
totally. It is a
that's good
skill. I
stuff.
mean, people always joke around with me about, oh, we'll just stick her in laundry. Like laundry is one of the most highly skilled jobs in interior. People don't realize. Like
Right.
to me, the first three boats, because the first three boats I worked on were big boats, so they all had
Right.
laundry masters, Filipino laundry masters, and they're another level. You couldn't even wish to
Right.
compete with them. There was no way you could spend weeks, days, and months, years in the laundry and not be as good as them. And that's something
Right.
to aspire to. So when I meet stewardesses and they sort of, you know, oh, laundry, yeah, it's an easy day. It's really not. It's not.
Right.
To be good at it it's a bit of a skill. Some owners aren't fussy, but others will pick up on that ironing skill and that, that level. It's definitely
Taking care.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's definitely a good skill to learn.
Yeah.
You should
That fine linen and fine clothes and stuff like that.
yeah,
It's a lot to deal with.
yeah,
Oh
not
man.
ruining stuff.
Yeah.
And trust
So-
and trust me, when you think you're too good for laundry and then you're chief stew for a couple of years, you would kill for a day in laundry.
yeah.
I'd do anything for a laundry day.
Chill on your tunes,
Hey
chill
guys, you
out,
take care of the
iron some
guests.
stuff.
I'm off to laundry. Oh, I can only dream of it.
Oh man, that's so true. That's so funny. I did cherish my days in laundry. Like, I really did. I was like, that first boat I worked on, I was super lucky because it was a Fed ship. We had windows in the laundry, which is
Oh, nice.
incredible.
Yeah, that is
And
incredible.
every boat I go on, I'm just like, show me your laundry room, and like, seeing the relays and the roller presses and all the nice things they've got. Just like, oh, it's so stunning.
I know.
It's nice to have a nice room
It's so nice.
to do your stuff in. Well, I guess
Exactly.
that kind of goes along, like my previous question goes along with like your what are your best tips for crew who want to have a solid, lasting career in yachting? Like you kind of mentioned how your husband, like wanted to fill the gaps in his CVs, like
Yeah.
to
I
yeah.
think
What's something?
one of the main things is speak to people above you. Don't speak to people and say, what do you think my next move should be? It hadn't even occurred to my husband at the time that was not that it was lacking. He didn't think he was great at it, but we were actually looking for a couple's job together, and it was our captain that said to him, you can't do that. You need to go. You need to, Alex needs to find a job where she's settled, because she's going to be at the top. She's going to be a chief stew next. I was second stew, so she's going to be a chief stew next, and she's not going to want to jump around. Whereas you need to get charter on your CV. You need to get some practical experience on your CV. Like speak to people above you. If you have a good relationship with them, and they'll tell you what you need to work on and what you need to pad out. Because if you're going to be a long-term yachty, then you, like I said, you can't expect to walk onto a busy charter boat and straight away, but maybe you could get onto a private / charter and get that charter experience, or whatever it is that you need to do. That's my first tip is work out what your end game is, where you want to be. Busy charter boats are great, but they're not a longevity thing, unless you have crazy stamina. Then they're hardcore, and that's fine. For some people, they've got that buzz and that energy, and that's great. But maybe that's not quite for you, and you can acknowledge that, and I can acknowledge it. It's not for me. Not crazy all out every day. And most charter boats understand that the itinerary they have is so full on. So I think one of the main things, if a stewardess ever came to me and said, like, what do you think my next move should be, I would happily tell them, depending on where they want to get to and what their long-term plans are.
That's nice too to have someone to talk to above you. And I think that people are generally really willing to give advice and give help. Like if you're willing to learn, which I feel is like kind of a lost art form in some places. Like
Definitely.
the willingness to learn is such a huge key factor in life, overreaching. But in yachting, if you're just not like, I know everything, people are will be willing to impart their knowledge into you. So.
Definitely. And I think I don't think that all boats are wonderful. I've worked on a few boats, and some have been amazing and others not so much, and I accept that there are crew out there that just want to earn their travel money. And I think, so for me, it doesn't matter as long as people are honest with me about what they want, then I can generally help them plan that career out. If you just want to travel and you only want to do summer seasons, then so be it. It's not going to be someone I employ. I do look at people's CVs and think, okay, I can see that pattern there, and that's not for me, because I want to invest time in somebody and I want to train somebody and I want someone to appreciate the program that I have for not being that crazy all out, summer season.
Right.
But yeah, as long as you're honest, then I'll happily help and explain, and suggest what I think would be best. I think you have to get, if you want to be in the industry, if you want to be in the industry longer, you have to get that longevity on your CV at some point.
Right. That's definitely something I was going to ask you, what you look for in a good CV. I know from the career agent side of things, we're always looking for longevity. It's just like, please, just give me someone who's done a year somewhere.
Exactly. But I think unfortunately, I think the industry encourages that, because every junior stu job I see is like 1 season preferable. Why are we encouraging that?
Right.
Why are we putting
Right.
that advert out there? 1 season preferable. Basically, get on a boat, do your season, and then the world's your oyster. It shouldn't work like that. I want to see someone that's done a whole year with only 6 weeks at home, or whatever the holiday that you have is. I want to see somebody that's actually stuck out a year of yachting through thick and thin,
Yeah.
through all seasons. And that's, unfortunately, I think that's the problem. I actually make a point of always having a junior on my team, new to the industry, because I don't want to encourage that 1 season thing. I don't understand where that comes from. I get it. I get there are a lot of boats where you go in 1 season, you come out the other side as if you've been through a washing machine and you're like, wow, what just happened to me? I get that it happens. There are those boat names you spot on someone's CV and think, wow, they did 9 months on there, have a medal. But then there are other boats where you're like, really, you could only stick that out for so long? Like, really?
Right. You're like, I know that boat. It's not that bad.
Yeah, exactly.
That's so true. And when you leave too is a big deal. I found, from dealing with certain people, captains, chief stews hiring, if you see someone who's left in the middle of a season, even if they've done it once, sometimes I've had people shoot down their resume because they're like, no, I can't, especially for busy charter boats. Like I've had people be like, sorry, I can't, because they've done it once, they might do it again. Or like, or if they're habitually leaving in the middle of the season, it just doesn't build trust in your resume. If you've got like 3 months here, 6 months there, 3 months here, 6 months there, and you've left in the middle of a season, it's just, that's going to, pretty much be the nail in your coffin for a few boats, especially charter boats, because they need to rely on you to not, be like, nope, I'm over it in the middle of the season. Just how you're saying, like, you want to know that people have stuck it out.
Exactly. And I spent 3.5 years on my first boat. I'm not going to tell you now it was all sunshine and rainbows. Of course it wasn't. There were really tough times. I think, people have to remember that boats change from season to season. Just because you're not getting on with somebody 1 season doesn't mean it doesn't all change. The dynamics change regularly. And okay, if you're not getting along with somebody and you're having a tough time, then that's fine. That's, you are living and breathing yachting. There's no getting away from that. That said, you do have to take a bit of responsibility that if you move on to another boat, it doesn't mean you're going to get on with every single crew member on that boat. You have to, there is a certain element of just accepting that and accepting that it isn't all going to be wonderful. You can only appreciate a section of your yachting career after the one that's gone before. By the time you reach the end of a long shipyard, you're like, woohoo, med season, and it does mean guests on it, does mean busy, but it's a nice change from what you've just done. Whereas if you're all constantly just walking out, I'm done now, then you don't get to experience the whole thing.
Huge shout out to our friends at Lauderdale Brewery and Taproom. We want to say a really big thank you to them for being one of our first deals partners here at Nautic Nomad. They are an awesome craft brewery here in Fort Lauderdale. They do events all the time. They have brunch, happy hours, ales and asanas, yoga. They also let people bring their dogs, which is really great. So if you don't have a boat dog and you want to get off and go see some pets, that's a great place to stop by, pet some dogs, and drink some beer. You can check out more information about this on our blog, nauticnomad.com/blog, or I'll link it in the show notes.
I've always worked on nice boats with really nice programs, nice teams where I want people that are going to at least try and stay and give it their best shot. And their intention is to stay, even if for whatever reason they can't. their intention when they join the boat is to stay, is to make a career of it.
That's good. How do you tell that from someone? Like, I guess it's hard to just tell from their CV, but I guess also in the interview does help a lot with that.
There is no way of telling. There is no way of telling. I have had somebody who left mid-season and that I hadn't employed, I'd inherited her. And when I looked at her CV, I could see straight away that was, I wouldn't have employed her based on that boat hopping thing. You know, it's fine. If you want to do it, but don't expect to get the crop of the jobs. The longevity thing, we can bang on about it as much as we want. I am looking for somebody that if they're not shiny new to the industry, I want to see they've stuck something out through thick and thin, and you are going to have tough times on a boat. And if you have left, then be honest about why you left, because it's such a small industry that somebody's going to know if it was something bad. And it wouldn't necessarily put me off if it was, you know, a mistake that you made. I think it's just very important to own up to that. And it's very important, you know, everybody hates that dreaded interview question, you know, what are your weaknesses? But it's good to know them. It is good to know them and to be able to say, you know, as a chief stew of 8 years, I'm pretty good at making cocktails. If I employed somebody that had worked in a cocktail bar in London previous to me, then I'm going to be calling on them when a cocktail is needed. I don't have to be the best at everything. I have to just know what my strengths are and what my team's strengths are. So it's good to know what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are. You know, you are going to have to answer that at some point in your yachting career, that dreaded question. And it is good to know what your, you know, what areas you want to work at. It doesn't have to be a negative. It's just, you know, knowing what you want to improve at and where your CV is lacking. As far as being a good crew member, own up to your mistakes. It's much easier if you say, hey, I just, you know, spilt this and damaged that. Don't hiding from it. Just be upfront, be as genuine as you can, and work hard, work really hard.
Get it done at all costs. Get it done.
Yeah. Get it done.
That's awesome. And what about things like, so obviously having the VPDSD is important for you guys.
The security duties thing. Yeah, if you're going to be on a bigger boat, definitely you have to have that.
And the food and hygiene level too.
And I think like understanding that those things are your responsibility. You know, you have to work out what you're going to need. If you want to go onto a bigger boat, then you need to get that. That's your responsibility. You know, get the qualifications, ask the yacht agents, find out what it is that you need to get onto those big boats.
Right. And then things like flower courses and
all of those things are good.
Helpful.
Yeah, they are. I think, you know, I only did my wine course last year, the year before, because I'd worked where it just wasn't needed. I don't think you need to go out and spend, you know, a fortune on all your qualifications unless you're planning to go the full hog. It's just a case of if you're on a boat and the owner is and you want to stay on that boat and you want to have a career in that boat, then you have to know the basics and use them. You know, not just know them. You know, get involved, talk about wine, whatever it is that you know. Don't avoid those jobs because you don't know. Because the more you practice when you haven't got pressure on you, the easier it'll be when you're in that situation where flowers get given to you and you're told to make an arrangement, or the owner turns around and asks you about the wine. You know, don't hide from difficult things.
Right. Yeah, and know everything that's on the plate too when you're serving it.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Oh man, that's something I always learned, you know, even if I was not like leading service or anything, you know, if I'm like number 3 person, like still, because it doesn't matter, like you're putting that down in front of the person that they just turn around and asking you better
ask, know. Yeah. And they're going to ask. And even if you know everything about an area, you know everything there is, you could name every beach along the stretch, you could know absolutely everything. They're still going to ask the most obscure question about whether they can, I don't know, ride a bike along the seafront or something, and you won't know the answer. But you have to at least know as much as you possibly can.
Like any other tips and tricks, or like maybe how to get to becoming a chief stew or crafting your
No, I think one of the main things that I try and tell young crew is to leave your ego at the door. Even as a chief stew, there, like I was saying with the cocktails, there's always going to be someone that knows more about something than me, and acknowledging there is a hierarchy, and the hierarchy doesn't just go within your department; it goes across the boat. I might be at a head of department meeting with my chief officer, but he is still my boss at the end of the day. You know, he is the chief officer of the yacht, and hierarchy has to happen from a safety point of view. There has to be a hierarchy in yachting. It has to happen. It's not. There's no way of running it as a nice, you know, democratic, everybody's on an equal footing point of view. It's just not physically possible. You have to have that chain of command. the people that go through these courses and they learn so much about stuff that you have no idea, especially as interior. Take your drill seriously and do as you're told, and accept that away from your day-to-day job there is a hierarchy that needs to be followed. And I think that's one of the biggest things I see with new careers, trying to explain that it's not an ego thing. It's purely because it has to be in place. There has to be, when you're halfway across the Atlantic, a chain of command, and that respect happens when you're tied to the dock.
Right.
You have to acknowledge that that's in place for a reason.
Yeah, that blows my mind. I mean, I've heard of, I almost laughed when you said this democratic thing, like some people being like, why can't we run the boat like a democracy? It's like, it just doesn't happen like that.
No,
Like,
it doesn't
we're talking
happen.
safety of lives at sea. Like, these people go
Yeah.
through years and years and a lifetime of training essentially to run the vessel, and how every single person's job happens. And even if you're just grabbing like the first aid kit, like that still is a very important chain of command thing that you've got to do, and your part in holding it
And
all
you have to
together.
take it. Yeah, you have to take it seriously, as we've seen in the industry with the accidents that have happened. It's no joke. You've all got to take it very seriously, and you'll get on better if you show those people above you respect. And that's not, I'm not always saying they deserve it. I'm not always saying that, but I'm saying, like, if you play your part, then you've got nothing to fall back on. You've done your best.
Like I started in sailing, so I have like a super healthy fear of the ocean. Like,
Yeah.
very, very like understanding of how extremely dangerous life is, and how fragile life at sea is. And I don't
Oh,
know,
all of it. Like,
or
yeah.
like, yeah, the
You ever
craziness.
speak to those captains that have had fires on board, and they're traumatized by it,
Yeah.
because of that everybody's lives are in their hands. So even if they're being a bit pedantic about something else, like, you just do as you're told, because they've earned the right to have that. The responsibility is in their hands, so they need to be respected, and that's how it works. So that when the chips are down, everybody knows where they stand. Nobody's got time for drills. We're all busy, but it's also important. And if you're the chief officer having to make those things happen, you just count yourself lucky you're on a boat that takes drills seriously. I think that's it.
Yeah.
Goes back to the same thing we were talking about at the beginning. Like, if your boat takes drills seriously, then you're in a good place. You're in a good place. You're going to go
Oh,
home
for
to your
sure.
family at the end of each day,
Yeah.
at the end of
Yeah.
end of each season. That's really important.
Yeah. Yeah. My first boat we used to drill, didn't matter what time it was. Like, I remember I would end up on deck, like in my towel with literally soap in my hair. And
Yeah.
because that was like how they would drill us in the middle of a crossing, and everyone knows how to roll with the hoses, everyone knows what their spot is, and everyone knows what they're doing, and
Yep.
you're ready
When it
to
becomes
freaking action.
automatic.
Exactly.
Definitely.
Like, how long did it take you to become a chief steward? How long do you think it takes? I guess it's all very dependent, but
Yeah, I think the difference with me is that I'd spent 7 years on the boat before I came. So I came in to super yachting at pretty much second stew level. I did one
okay.
season, Caribbean season, as junior stew, and then was promoted to second stew on a 70-meter yacht. So I was a bit different because I'd already had this like experience of managing a team and running a charter boat. It depends what your career goals are. I think you have to appreciate that if you're a second stew or chief stew on a smaller boat and you want to get into bigger boats, then you're going to have to take a step down, and you're going to have to learn a whole new thing, because they are very, very different in the way that, in the standard that can be achieved, and that you can't physically. I worked on a 47-meter and after a 70-meter, and I found it really hard to walk away from certain things that I was used to having enough stewardesses to cover.
Oh, right.
Because you're split thinner. You can only do so much. There's only physically the amount you can do in a day between 3 of you as opposed to 7 of you. Same amount of guests. So the reality is, if you're on a smaller boat and then you go on to a bigger boat, you're not going to walk straight on as chief stew. I think it depends on what your end goal is. But I would say, as on a boat of this size, you're from zero, from new to the industry, you would be looking at 3 to 4 years to do it properly. I would expect. You could start on a boat and be promoted very quickly. I think it's one of the biggest problems in the industry, that you can be promoted very quickly purely because circumstances and people leave, and you're there, and you're doing a good job. Don't get me wrong. Like, you're not going to get promoted if you're not doing a good job. But you can end up in that position. But then if you were to leave that boat and go on to another boat, you're not necessarily qualified to. You won't have done all the different services. I can fully acknowledge that I've always been on private boats with English American owners. So I'm not necessarily going to apply for that Russian boat where Russian service is key, because I'm going to feel like a fish out of water.
Right.
So I choose that or not, that's, you know, my prerogative, but I'm not necessarily going to put myself forward for that, because I don't know what you know, there's nothing wrong with admitting that you can acknowledge that that's not something, you know, and I'm 37, so I'm not about to start going and learning Russian service. I've got no interest in it. There are enough boats for me that don't involve
Right.
that. But, you know, you have to accept that if you were to end up promoted very quickly, and longevity is, you know, it has its own problems, because you don't learn lots of different boats, you learn one boat.
Right.
So as much as longevity, you know, you've got to get a bit of longevity on your CV, you also have to build a broad CV.
Right.
And that balance can probably be quite hard.
I think too, if you pick what you know that you're going to be in yachting long term, and you think, look, I want to do, you know, charter boats, you know, when I can, and then to like a private vessel, or, you know, if you want to go out in a blaze of glory and just do like charter all over the end.
Exactly.
But, yeah, figuring out what your path is going to be and what you want to do, and that'll help you move laterally and up.
Yeah, definitely. And you're not always going to move up. Sometimes you do need to move laterally or backwards, in your opinion. If you've been a chief steward on a smaller boat and you want to get into 80, 90 meters plus, then you're going to be one of many stews, and that is kind of backwards in I guess in your head. But but you know, there is quite a big division, and there is a big difference in how boats run. Even the, you know, from this boat 60 meters to my previous boat of 70 meters, there's a very big difference in what we can achieve in a day and how we run the boat.
All right, nomads, thank you so much for tuning in. In conclusion, getting advice from those who've gone before you, such as your chief stew, head of department, first officers, captains, etc., is a great way to learn about what you can do to tailor your career to benefit you so that you can get the most out of it. So ask people who are above you and who have already gone in the places where you want to be. And of course, creating that longevity on your CV. I swear, if you can just do 1 to 2 years on a boat, you're going to put yourself ahead of so many other people out there and get better jobs. Stay tuned for my next couple of episodes featuring Jamila at Super Yacht Chief Stew on Instagram and Gemma at The Yacht Stew, where we discuss planning for life after yachting, bullying on board, and their favorite places to travel and explore the world by boat. Until next time, safe sails and following seas, everyone. Please don't forget to subscribe, rate us, and like us if you are enjoying this podcast. Please share it with your friends and help us grow and reach more people. Thank you.